Hi, this is Susan Arango from Little Guy CGI, and today I'm going to walk you through some steps on texturing the model that we've been working with. We already UV unwrapped it and I showed you how to apply materials to it. So now we're going to take a step back to where we had just finished UV unwrapping her, and I'll show you one way of the many to apply textures. If you're new to Blender, we suggest that you go to File, User Preferences, Input, and you'll see here it says Select with Left or Right. By default, Blender comes Select Right. Just click Select Left, save user settings, and your mouse will work in the way that you're used to coming from other programs. Now we're going to open the file that we've been using for our tutorials. And if you go back to the original UV Unwrap tutorial, this model is there for download so that you can use the exact model that are being used in this tutorial. I'm going to start at the stage where we have already marked our seams. You can see the red lines here, and if you press A, you can see that everything has been selected and unwrapped, and we have our UV map over here. So right now the model has been the seams have been cleared. We've UV unwrapped each part of her, and that's as far as we've went. So this is where I'm starting this tutorial to apply the textures. In addition to using Blender for this particular tutorial, we're also going to use GIMP. If you are not familiar with the program GIMP, I suggest that you go to the internet and download it. And it works basically like Photoshop, and the user interface isn't quite as scary as Blender's is, but we will be going back and forth between the GIMP program and the Blender program to apply and adjust the textures to our model, as well as using a little bit of the texture paint tool in Blender. So if you don't have GIMP already installed in your computer, go to download.com and type in GIMP. Follow the directions and it'll have GIMP installed on your computer in no time. I'll go over a little bit of the interface when we encounter the GIMP program during this tutorial, but perhaps in the future I'll put up other tutorials about how to use GIMP and its interface. It's a very nice program. It rivals Photoshop. It's better than Photoshop in some instances. We do a lot of our graphic design, creating different elements for websites and backgrounds for Blender. We use it for the textures for models. We also do photo restoration with it, so it's a very good program, and as Blender is, it's open source, so it's something good to have in your repertoire of programs. So after you've installed GIMP, if you already have it installed, you're good, then we're good to go. So we're going to hit A and deselect everything here. And one thing I want you to keep in mind when you're doing this texture painting in Blender is you have to save, save, save. And not only do you save here just in case Blender crashes, which it doesn't do often, but it does happen, you also have to save down here as well, and as we go through the tutorial I'll show you how to do that. But just remember that it's very important to save. It's also important to save in the GIMP program as well your steps, so you can go back and make adjustments as necessary. So the first thing we're going to do is select all. We're going to come over here to this button that says UVs. We're going to click UV, click it again, go up to Export UV Layout, click on that. It's going to bring you to your Blender save screen. I've already created this hierarchy. I like everything very, very organized. So before I start, I make up this hierarchy of folders, and in it you'll see the different save folders. So we're going to go to UV Maps, and we're going to leave the name Base Female Unwrap for tutorials, and the only thing I'm going to add is at the beginning I'm going to add UV. so I know that that's the UV. And then we'll click Export Layout. Now later on that's going to be important when we go into GIMP. For right now that's all you need to do with that. If you hit, let's see, let's go to Image. One thing that you have to remember is, just like when we did the materials tutorial, if you remember, there was an original material on the model that you had to have before that you could apply any other materials. This is no different. You need a canvas in order to paint on, is what ALOT calls it. So we're going to click Image and we're going to click New Image, and what this is your base canvas for your model. Now if you're doing something that is predominantly one color, let's say a spaceship that's a light gray, or a brushed gunmetal blue, or a dinosaur that's green, you can start out with that color. Because we're doing a female model, we're going to start out with a flesh color, so I'm just going to name it flesh just because I like to be organized. This you can leave it at 1024, you can change it to 2048, you can up it again from there. All that does is change the size of the UV map square here, and allows you to do way more detail. So if you're predominantly concerned about a lot of detail in the face, then you want to make this as high as possible. Otherwise you can leave it at 1024 or change it to 2048, which is what I'm going to do now. Then you select this and it brings up your color wheel. When I first opened this, I'm like, why the heck do they only have black to choose from? But if you slide this slider here, you see it goes up to white and you have all your colors to choose from. So we're just going to pick something in the fleshy area, just like with our materials. If you have a color that you're using because it's uniform throughout your entire project, you can put the values in here just like we did with the materials. This here you use when you're unwrapping. I don't think I covered it in the last tutorial, but there's a grid here. There's a color grid and a UV grid, and what that does is it puts lines, numbers, or checkerboard pattern behind here, so when you see it on your model you know whether or not your mesh is being stretched. I've seen people use it and manipulate the lines and change the edge loops and all this other stuff to make the UV map lay more smoothly. That's very cool and all that, but I haven't wrapped my brain totally around that yet, so I don't mess with that too much just yet. But for right now we're just going to put the color on the background that we want. You hit OK, and as you can see we now have our canvas that we'll be able to paint on. Okay, so remember I mentioned save, save, save. Blender in its infinite wisdom puts a little reminder here to let you know that you have something new that needs to be saved. You see those little asterisks next to the image word here. You click on that and we're going to go save as image, and we're going to make sure we don't want it in the Blender saves because I have to be organized. So that's a texture layer, so we're going to go into texture layer, and we already know that that's our base coat called flesh, saving it as a PNG, so that's fine. So we'll click Save Image. So now our image is good, and we're going to go up here as long as we're saving, and we're going to number this. And what we usually do when we're making tutorials is we number it according to what take on the tutorials we are. So I'll just number it 6 for now because this is take number 6. And so our image is here and we're ready to texture paint. Okay, in order to see your progress, we need to set up our light and our camera. So we're going to switch to object mode, and as you can see you don't see anything here, which would drive you crazy if you didn't know what to do. So in the next little block over, you'll see this circle. You click on textured, and what that does is it shows you what the UV is projecting onto the model. I turned on the selector down here to be able to move the light around. Oops, I have to click on the light. and we'll move the light just so we have it in a position where we can see the model, so that we can know what we're the textures that we put on it, if they look nice or not. Hit 0 on your number keypad so you can see what your camera is showing. Hit N on your keyboard to bring up your display right here, and we're going to scroll up and find Lock Camera to View. Hit N again to get that out of your way. Now you just roll your mouse wheel and hold Shift, hold your middle mouse button down to move your model around until you get her in the position that you want her. If you need to turn her this way, just hold your middle mouse wheel down, no shift. If you need to move her like this, use Shift and your middle mouse wheel. So we'll get her right about there. Maybe move it up just a little bit. And if you want to check and see if you're happy with that, hit Render, and it looks pretty good. So if you're happy with that, hit N again, unclick Lock Camera from View, and again to get rid of that, 0 to get out of the camera. So now everything's set up so that when we apply some textures to it, you'll be able to see exactly what it looks like as soon as you hit the render button. So now we need to select the model again. I'm going to turn off that manipulator because it gets in my way. We're going to change this back to solid, and we're going to change this back to edit mode. So now we're ready to start. Now remember what I said, you have your canvas here in order to paint on, which is what we'll be using in GIMP, and we'll get to that in a few moments. However, here we still need to apply our material over here, our initial material, because you have to have a material in order to texture paint onto the model. So you're going to hit Material. You're going to hit the plus here. Don't just hit New. You hit the plus here. Why? I don't know. Ali said to do that, and it seems to work. So we're going to hit the plus. Then you can either hit New, or you can come here and just select that. Either way, it doesn't matter. Then we're going to go over to texture. One other thing I can tell you, and again, I don't know why this is, but if you don't do material first and you go directly to texture, it will give you options to choose from in that texture panel. However, those textures are somehow different than the textures that are applied to a material. So make sure that you go to the material button first, set up your first material here, and then go to the texture button, and it should look like this. You should have the material button first and then the texture button there. We're going to click New. We're going to slide down here where you see New here. We're going to hit this arrow and hit Flesh because we've already saved it. Now if you hadn't saved it, you could go to New and find it if there was something else in your computer you wanted to put there, but we're working very simply to begin with here, just so we can wrap our brains around what's going on. So we're only dealing with the picture that we saved over here. So that's the only one that was in the hierarchy, so that's what we have. And if you scroll down here, the mapping coordinates are from the UV. Blender puts that in by default, so you don't have to worry about it, but if for some reason it wasn't working right, come down and just check that the coordinates are from the UV, and you should be good to go. This portion of the panel right here is going to be very important as we move through this tutorial, and I'll explain that as we go along. But for right now, if we come up here to render, this is what it should look like. You should see just your color that you chose over here for your background on the model. We have our light. It's not great, but it's set up okay. Our camera is somewhere that we can see almost all of what's going on. So for right now, this will do. And if you really hate that shiny stuff like I do, if you remember back in our other tutorial, if you go to Material and you come down here, excuse me, to Specular, you can see the shininess right here on the example sphere. Just grab the intensity and lower it down, and you can see that go away. So I like it much better when it looks nice and soft like this. So if you want to just check it real quick, and that looks much better. So now we're ready to finally, now that we have our canvas all set up and laid out, texture paint. Okay, as you can see over here, Blender is reminding us that we've made changes to our image with the little asterisk. So we're going to go Save Image As, and I'm going to put a 1 in front of here, and we'll save that, and that way we keep everything organized. So now we're going to unselect everything, and let's say we want to start with her jacket. Just like in our materials, we're going to click 1, Control L, and it's going to select our entire mesh for that portion. Okay, then we're going to come down here and we're going to click Texture Paint. Now don't get upset because this disappeared and this looks different. That's the way it's supposed to look. So we're going to come down here to this box, and if you remember from the materials tutorial, when you click this box, it's going to highlight only what you have selected over here and on your model as far as the UV goes, so that you can't paint anywhere else except for there. And believe me, that's a huge help because before I watched the tutorial that showed me how to do that, it was very difficult to try and stay in the lines. One thing that you want to keep in mind when you first come into Texture Paint is by default Blender starts out at 0.7, which it's okay, but it's a little on the light side for just applying your base coats, which is what we're doing now. So you just click grab and put it up to 1. If for whatever reason you want it lighter than that, that's fine. Your color picker works the same way, and you have a foreground and a background that you can switch here. I don't use that too much because I do most of the fine adjustments in GIMP when I'm doing it this way. So I just primarily stick with the foreground color here. So we're going to set that at our burgundy reddish color that we had before that I kind of liked. The slider still works the same like this. If you click on this up here, it's going to give you your different options for your brushes. The clone brush is really cool, and I'm going to cover that in a later tutorial where you can actually take pictures of, like we talked about before, jeans, and apply the actual jeans picture to the shorts on your model, and it's a little tedious, but it looks really cool when you get it just right. But for right now, we're just going to stick with the brush that comes in by default here. The other things on here we're not going to worry about right now. You can scroll that down and take a look at them, but for this tutorial we're not going to worry about that right now. The radius is the size of your brush. You can either control it here, or if you hit F and just move your mouse left or right, it also controls your radius, and you see that correlates to the box over here. So you make it whatever size you want, left click to lock it in, and it stays that size. You want to change it, hit F again, make it bigger, make it smaller, left click, locks it in. So if we start to paint, we can see that our color is showing up where it belongs, and it also shows up over here on our UV map exactly where it belongs. I can't tell you how much I love that box. It was so difficult before to try and get things just so. So like I said earlier, you just go around and it will only color exactly what you have selected, and it's fabulous. Now let's say for whatever reason you wanted to paint over here. See this little section inside of here, in between here? We're not getting it, so if for whatever reason you wanted to paint on the UV directly, hold your hold your middle mouse button down and pull to the right, and it slides over and shows you these other options. Where you see view here, click paint, and now if we roll our mouse wheel and scroll in a little bit, hold the middle mouse button down to move it. If we come here now, we can paint directly on the UV. We're going to hit F to make it a little bit bigger, left click to lock it in. One thing you want to keep in mind though, when you're painting over here, you can go outside of your UV. Not a big deal here, but here it can bleed onto the other UV, and that will show up on your model over here. So you want to keep that in mind. Control Z to get rid of that. So when you come over here for doing inside here, it's fine, but when you get to those edges, nothing beats being able to do this and just go back and forth really quickly and color in your model very nicely over here and very quickly. and we're just holding the middle mouse button down and spinning her around, making sure we got all our areas covered. And that looks pretty good. We're missing a few spots over here we can fill in. And like I said, it's a little more tedious doing it on this side, but I'm sure some of you creative people out there have some type of something that you need where you would have to do that. If you come over here to stroke, this is something new that's in Blender that I had been waiting for. I'm going to hold down Shift and my middle mouse button to move this over so you can see better. Roll the middle mouse button up here. Right here where it says space, click on that, change it to line. This is so useful. You can now draw a straight line in Blender. Before you couldn't do that. So we're going to hold F. We're going to make this smaller. It works a little different than the paint programs. You're going to click and then pull like that in order to get your straight line. So click and hold and pull. Whereas in GIMP and Photoshop, you hold Shift, you click and hold Shift, and then it draws the line for you. Here you click and hold and pull, and it draws a straight line. So you know, wherever you need that to be, that'll be a big help, believe me, in being able to draw straight lines. Click and pull, and click and pull, and then just remember to go back here, change it back to space, and then you're right back to the default brush, the way the default brush works there. So that can be very helpful when you need to draw a straight line in Blender. Okay, so now we're going to open the GIMP program. Come up here to File, Open, and we're going to go to Desktop and open our texture layers, and I'm sorry, not texture layers. We're going to open our UV map. And as you can see here, it brought in our UV map exactly the way it was in Blender. Then we're going to go back to File, back to Open, and we're going to open our texture layer, Flesh. Okay, now we're going to go back to Blender, and we're going to hold the middle mouse button down, and we're going to shift this to the right. And as you can see here, Blender reminded me that I've made changes to this picture, which I now need in GIMP, which wasn't there. So we're going to come here, we're going to click Save As, and up here we're going to change the name of this from Flesh to Jacket. I don't want that PNG in there. To Jacket, and we'll hit Save. And then we'll go to GIMP, and we will open the one that has our jacket on it. And there you see our texture layer that has our jacket on it. Now, here's the beauty of what you can do with GIMP. Go back to your UV layer. Without making any changes or doing anything to it, come up here to Edit, click Copy, go to your jacket layer, click that, click Paste Into, and you'll see these marching ant things over here. Come over here where it says Create New Layer, and you'll see up here it says Floating Selection. In GIMP, you have to create a new layer to put your selection on. So simply click New Layer, and now our UV map is in there. So we're going to scale this up. This is the scale tool right here. I'm going to left click in there, and if you try to type in 2048 here, it doesn't work for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. So take push down Control, grab one corner, start to pull. Then it'll let you come down here and make changes. I guess you just have to move it a little bit to make it happy before you make your changes in here. So we're going to put 2048 in both of those, hit enter, and scale. So now, as soon as we center this, oops, if it does that, Control Z back, if it does that, it's because this radio button over here is clicked on layer, so it moved the layer that I was selected on. Click move active layer, that's all you have to do. Make sure you're selected on the right layer, and then just move your UV map into place. So now we have our UV map over top of our texture layer that has the paint on it from Blender. So now we're going to click on this, and we're going to lower the opacity down because it's kind of annoying seeing it that bright there. So we'll lower it down just so we can still see the lines. Now let's say you want to work on the face here, because the face is the coolest part of the model sometimes. So if you want to zoom in, hold Control and roll your middle mouse wheel away from you, zooms in, pull it back toward you, zooms out. So that's just a real quick way. Also hold down your middle mouse button in order to move the frame around like that. Okay, so we know that this is the lips right here, so let's put some color into the lips. And just like Photoshop, you have to remember to be on the right layer. We don't want to color on the UV layer. So you can turn it on and off with this eye, but as you can see, if you turn it off, you can't see where to put your lips or any of your colors. So you want to leave the eye turned on for right now and just select the jacket layer, and it'll paint only on the jacket layer. So we'll come over here and we'll pick a nice pink color for the lips, and we'll click our paintbrush. The bracket keys are what control the size of the brush in GIMP. I don't know if that's the same in Photoshop or not, but bracket keys right and left control it up and down. Over here are your controls for your opacity. If you click this, it gives you your different brush options: hard edge, soft edge. You can control the size here if you want to, and there's a whole bunch of other tools here that you can use, but for right now we're just going to concern ourselves with the brush right here. So we're going to paint on here like that. I'm not too concerned right now with being perfect. I just want to show you how to go back and forth between the two programs to make your changes in GIMP, fine-tune it in GIMP. Let's use our color picker, and we're going to pick the flesh color that we brought in from GIMP, and we're going to make that a little darker to put some shadows in, say right about there. We're going to make our brush bigger, and we're going to bring our opacity down some, and right under the eyes here we're just going to put a little bit of shadow, a little bit around the nose, and we're going to increase our opacity up, make our brush smaller, Control Z that, and let's draw in an eyebrows. Again, I'm not trying to be perfect with this. I just want to be able to show you that the changes you make here, what they do when you bring them into Blender, and how you can go back and forth between the two programs. So now I'm going to roll out, and I'm going to come up here to the jacket, holding middle mouse and Control, rolling in and out. And now let's say we put some gold. Let's say we put it around the cuffs here, just like for an edge. Holding the middle mouse down and pulling. Now here, if you go over on your UV, it won't matter because it's only going to show up on your model exactly what you're doing to the UV. So you can be a little sloppy here. Just make sure the part that shows up on your UV is the way that you want it to be. Let's say here we want a line down the center. We're going to click, hold Shift, and that's how you draw a straight line in GIMP. Alright, so that looks pretty good for now. Like I said, I don't want it to be perfect. I just want to show you how to go back and forth between the two programs. So we're going to hold down Control, roll our mouse wheel out, and take a look at what we have here. So now you have everything all set up to send back into Blender. However, if you send it back looking the way it does right now, these lines of your UV would show up on your textured model. And you don't want that, so you have to remember to close the eye. And before we go back in, I want to add some color to the shorts here just so you can see how easy it is to go back and forth between these two programs and make adjustments. So we're going to color this in kind of the same way we colored in the jacket in Blender. We'll remember to turn our eye off. Come up here. If you want to save your GIMP file, just click Save As. It'll save it as an XCF file, which is a GIMP file, and it'll save all your layers and everything just like Photoshop. We want to export it. When you come here to export as, if you were collaborating with someone on a project and they had another program besides GIMP that they were using, you could come here to select file type, and this allows you to save it in almost any conceivable file that someone else would be using. Most importantly, Photoshop here, it will save it as a PSD so that when you send that to someone, it'll open up with all the layers intact. But we need to send it to Blender. Now we're going to come in here and we're going to export it. Now you do need to remember, and let me open Blender back up just so you understand, that over here, remember I said this is the most important bar right here to remember, because this is where we're going to do all our refreshes from. So if you save it anywhere out of GIMP other than this, when you come back in here, you would have to click this file button and find it in order to see it applied here. We want to do it easy, one click, so we need to make sure that texture layers 1_jacket.png is where we are saving our GIMP file to. So we're going to go back to GIMP, and here we need to go out of our GIMP saves and into our texture layers, and here's our _jacket. So this is what we need to overwrite. So this already exists, so we're going to replace it. Now if for some reason you didn't want to replace it, again, we're doing this for ease of going back and forth between the two programs, making changes just so we can wrap our brains around how to do this texture painting thing. You would just change the name of it, and then you would have to click the file in Blender in order to find it in your hierarchy of saves and load it that way. However, we want to do it in one click, so we're going to name it this. Export, it tells me that it already exists. I want to replace it. We're going to, this will pop up, and you can just leave all the defaults the same. The only one that we usually change is we may uncheck Save Background Color if we're saving a transparent PNG for some reason, just so there isn't any inadvertent background color saved. But for our purposes, just leave that the way it is. Hit Export. And now we'll come down here and open Blender, and we'll make this a little bit smaller. We come over here to this refresh button, and you can see the changes have been applied to our model. We see, let me turn this off here. You can see the yellow at the wrists. You can see the green, the green shorts, the yellow down the jacket, and her pink lips, which we didn't guess too bad on where that geometry was, so that doesn't look too bad. But with one click, we went from GIMP and the changes that we made to our texture layer and using our UV map as a guide. With one click, we came here and we refreshed our model so that now we see the changes that we made here. So let's go back to GIMP. We'll turn our UV map on again. Now let's say what can we do to her? Let's say you wanted to give her some outlandish blue eyeshadow for whatever reason. We're going to hold down shift and, control, I'm sorry, and roll our middle mouse button in. We'll make our paintbrush a little bit smaller, and we're going to give her some horrible blue eyeshadow. Again, we're not being super precise. I just want to show you how easy it is to go back and forth between them. Let's say we want to highlight under her ears a little bit. We'll make this a little bit darker like that. We'll lower the opacity down a little bit and we'll make some shadows around her ears. One other thing that GIMP does that's very, very cool, one thing that I like is this button right here is your dodge burn tool, and that can give you some really, really nice shadows because it takes the color that you are already using and it burns it, meaning it changes the color of it slightly. You have to be careful how you use it. When you go over where you've already been, it makes it darker and whatnot, but it's something very cool to play with. The burn makes it darker, and if you switch it to the dodge, it makes it lighter. So it's a really quick way to add in highlights where you would need some. Those are a little crazy for what we're trying to do, but just so you can see that there's a lot of different options here that you can do as you go back and forth between the two programs to make changes in your models. Okay, so now we scroll back and we are going to turn off our eye. We're going to come up here to export, export as. We don't need to change anything here. Export, replace, export, go back to Blender, hit refresh, and now you can see our clown makeup that we've applied to her face, which looks absolutely horrible, but you can see how easy it is to go back and forth between the two programs. So let's go back to GIMP, turn our UV back on, let's fix her all up, take all this horribleness away. I need to raise our opacity up. And let's change our shorts to a brown color. Again, just so you can see how easy it is to make changes as you go back and forth between the two programs. I'm not trying to do this to make it look nice. I don't, need the model to look nice or anything. I just wanted to show you how easily you can go back and forth between the two programs. Okay, so we'll turn our UV off again, come up here to export, export as. Again, keep it, for whatever reason it switched to flesh, so we're going to make sure we change it back to the jacket. Hit export, we're going to replace, export again, go back to Blender, refresh, and now we're back in business with her looking like a normal human being again, and our shorts are brown. So that's how you can go back and forth between GIMP and Blender, making minor adjustments. You can do your base colors in here. You can do the fine adjustments in here if you wanted to over here on your model. If you wanted to paint the lips over here pink instead of doing it in Blender, in GIMP, just find the color that you want here. Check your opacity, come here, paint the lips, and then when you come over here, as you can see, we went a little crazy. So you would select on your color here, get your color picker, pick your flesh color again, and then looking here, if you scroll in really close and go back to here, you can go back and forth between your mesh UV geometry, and you can see what you're doing over here. So as I erase here, I can see over here where it's being erased. So I know exactly where I need to put it to make it look right, which can be more beneficial than doing it in GIMP. So you can do your major painting in GIMP because it's fast, and you have a little bit more control, and if you understand the Photoshop and the GIMP programs, you can do the majority of your work there, and then come here where you're learning to get a little more acclimated. And I'm just going back and forth between the two screens to adjust her lipstick so that it looks halfway decent. It isn't all over her face. So again, I was not trying to make her perfect looking by any stretch of the imagination. I just wanted to show you how you can go back and forth. If for some reason something starts going haywire over here on this side, just remember that you have this set to paint. You may want to put it back to view for whatever reason. I've run into that problem before where I couldn't figure out what was wrong. It wasn't doing what I wanted it to do, and it was because I still had it in paint and I needed to change it to view, or I had it in view and I needed to change it to paint. So just to recap, remember to save your images. Again, Blender will tell you with the little asterisk here when you've made changes and you need to save your images. I use the number system only because it makes it quicker. I can come to the plus sign here, click 2, and now I know that that is my most recent save. It's just a quick way. Again, I'm not doing these things to make them look perfect. I'm just doing them to try and understand the texture paint process and how to go back and forth between the programs and how to get it to look halfway decent with the base colors before I even move on to the more intricate stuff. So remember to save. You export your UV in the beginning so that you can open that in GIMP in order to use it as a guide. After that, you really don't have to do anything with that. Remember to save your images here. Use the default brush to start with. You can explore the other options with the brushes at your leisure. The color wheel and all of that works the same as what you're used to in other things. The stroke method, remember, if you need a straight line for whatever reason, click line, and you click and drag, and that will give you your straight line. And remember to, when you first, after you unwrap your UV, you need to create a canvas over here in order to paint on whatever color you choose from the background. You can choose the default gray, you can choose whatever color you want, but you have to create an image over here, and then you have to save it before you can even begin texture painting. Then you have to come over here to your material, make sure you have one material applied, then hit texture, and then hit new, and come down here, and this is the only one you need to concern yourself with as you go back and forth between GIMP. When you're in GIMP, just remember to turn the eye off before you export out your texture layer. Otherwise, you will see these on your model. And also remember that when you export it, you need to export it. Remember what you exported it as, because when you go back to Blender, you can either one-click if you're exporting it as what you already have here. If you're exporting it as something else, you just click this file button here, find it in your hierarchy of files, wherever you put it, hit accept, and it should pop up here because this is what it's reading. It's reading whatever is in here. So that's Texture Painting 101, short and simple. I hope it was helpful. I hope that between this and the materials you can at least get some basic colors and detail on your models so that they start to have a little bit of character and a little bit of life of their own. As always, if you have any questions whatsoever, please leave them in the comment section below. I try to check them every day, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I'm going to do more tutorials on the other ways that you can texture models, clone texturing, the ambient occlusion and all of that in the coming weeks. But for right now, I just wanted to give you a quick and easy way to get back and forth between GIMP and Blender to bring some life to your models. So if you like these tutorials and you want to see more, just click like, comment below, and please subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching and have a great day.